My dear Masala Podcast fans, I've written a book called Bad Daughter. You surprised by the title? I think not. I've never shared such deeply personal things before. I talk about growing up in poverty. I talk about my father's violence, my mother's murder. I talk about how I turned my pain into power, navigating mental health, sexuality, spirituality, and patriarchy. Bad Daughter is my story of going from Mumbai's slums to New York's billboards. But it's your story too. What's the message of this book? It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what happened to you. You still get to have the life that you want. If you're looking for a book to move you and inspire you to change your life, type in Bad Daughter by Sangeeta Pillai on Amazon or go to my website, baddaughter.co.uk.
It's a very pervasive thing that I feel affects me, affects everyone that I know in this industry and people who watch these movies and watch movies from Bollywood. And I just think it's sad.
In this episode, I explore the theme of beauty standards, among other topics. I'm interviewing the very talented actor, Richa Moorjani, who played Kamala in the hit Netflix show, Never Have I Ever.
I feel very privileged to be here at a time where people have paved the way for me. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it had not been for actors who have come much before me, and it was much more difficult for them when they arrived in town.
We discussed the tussle between Western and Eastern beauty standards. Why is it that as South Asian women, we've bought into the whole skinny Western beauty aesthetic? We also explore other topics, like the importance of South Asian representation in entertainment. Richa shares her commitment to shining a light on South Asian talent. I loved my conversation with Richa Moorjani. I hope you do too.
Besharam, badtameez, chi, gandi, chal hat, toba, oho, bad beti.
I'm Sangeeta Pillai, and this is the Masala Podcast. This multi-award-winning feminist podcast for and by South Asian women is all about cultural taboos, from sex, sexuality, mental health, menopause, to nipple hair, and more. This season is a US special, and it took me by surprise. You see, I interviewed these incredible South Asian American women. I expected to hear some angst around identity and belonging. Instead, they told me how comfortable they were with both their South Asian and American identity. I confess, this is not the podcast season I set out to record. It's so much more powerful. Hello and welcome to Masala Podcast. So today I have with me someone I've admired from afar for a very long time, Richa Moorjani. I watch her on screen. I kind of follow her on Instagram. And I was absolutely thrilled that Richa wanted to be on Masala Podcast. Welcome to Masala Podcast, Richa. I read that your parents were musicians in a Bollywood cover band. That sounds brilliant. Tell me a little bit about that.
So, yes, my parents are both musicians, and my mother actually moved to the US when she was 7 years old. So she pretty much grew up here. Although, the first 7 years of her life, she was in Mysore. And my dad moved here to get his PhD at UC Berkeley in his 20s. Both of them had always had such a passion for music. My mom was a singer, is a singer. And my dad likes to play, he's a self-taught musician, so he plays many different instruments. When he went to Berkeley, he became close friends with several other Indian immigrants, and they formed a band together to play Hindi cover songs. And they needed a female lead singer, so they held auditions. So much before I ever went for auditions, my mom went for auditions. And she auditioned for the band because she lived in the same area. And that's how they met. And my dad went to go watch her perform at one of her performances. She sang Churalia. And he watched her perform and he said, not only is she going to sing in my band, she's going to be my wife. And
oh my
then
God.
That's literally what happened.
That story sounded so much like a Bollywood love story. And it reminded me of all the romantic Bollywood films that I grew up watching in Mumbai. Silsila, which featured my teenage crush Amitabh Bachchan. The story mirrored some saucy rumors involving the stars of that film. I also remember watching the old black and white film Mughal-e-Azam about the love affair between a crown prince and a court dancer. Then there's the favorite of so many, Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge, or DDLJ as it's referred to. But now looking back and reflecting on these classic Bollywood romances, so much misogyny in so many of them. But that's for another conversation. For now, let's get back to Richa and hear more about how she grew up in the Bay Area.
I think a lot of people think of it obviously as, the tech hub, it's Silicon Valley, and that's all true. But there's also a thriving art scene in the Bay Area and a huge South Asian community. So I grew up totally immersed in culture, in arts. I grew up doing Indian classical dance. My grandmother had a company that she started of her own for over 40 years called Bay Area Performing Arts, where she brought the most famous musicians from India like Zakir Hussain and Shiv Kumar Sharma, all the biggest Indian classical musicians. She had concerts for them in the Bay Area. She was the producer. So I grew up surrounded by all these things, and naturally that led me to having a passion for storytelling and acting and dance. So I really think that, my roots as an artist definitely began in the Bay Area.
You were saying there were a lot of South Asians in the area. Did it feel like you were part of that? What was it like? Did it feel like you were part of that community?
Yes, absolutely. We have a big extended family in the Bay Area. And I say extended because that's, our family friends who I grew up with, they feel more like cousins and sisters and brothers. They don't just feel like friends of the family. I felt like I had almost two different lives. One life was at school where, there were South Asian people in my school and I had a lot of South Asian friends, but still, it was an American school and definitely didn't feel like I was, immersed in my culture at school. But then, the weekends was my second life. And that was when we would be with our extended family and going to melas and, other performances and concerts and spending time with people from my community.
I always come across this phrase about leading a double life as somebody from the diaspora. I hear this in Britain, I hear this in America. Did it feel like that in a sense that there was this Indian part of you and then there was this American part of you?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know. It was something that I had to navigate, and it definitely led to identity crisis, just like for many people that we know. But one thing I'm very grateful for is that my parents, it was never forced. They never forced me to connect to my culture and do cultural things. It was always just very organic and natural. And I always loved my culture.
I grew up watching beautiful women in Indian movies. But all these women had curves. They were real women. Whether it was the glamorous Madhubala in old black and white movies, or Madhuri Dixit doing her super sexy Dhak Dhak song, none of these gorgeous women were what you'd call skinny. But now, when I see Bollywood films, or even South Asian fashion magazines, the aesthetic has definitely changed to a Western thin and skinny look. I think this obsession with weight is designed to keep women feeling bad about themselves, constantly striving to be thinner. It got me thinking, when did our South Asian culture, which loved sensual, voluptuous shapes, switch to this Western beauty standard of slimness? When did we move from celebrating real South Asian women with their luscious curves and start worshipping at the altar of thinness?
When you do Indian classical dance, that's a direct connection to culture and heritage that I don't think anything else can give you. When you're not living in the motherland.
So your kind of whole journey to become an actor, did you ever see people like you who were actors when you were younger? When you were maybe like, I don't know, as a teenager or whenever that dream started for you? Did you see anyone like you that you thought, oh, I could be this person?
Definitely not in Hollywood, but in Bollywood, yes. And that's why I grew up thinking, because I, since before I can even remember, I wanted to be an actor. But I always thought as a young girl, and even up until college, I thought, if I want to be an actor, I have to move to India because that's the only place where I can do it. And also I loved Bollywood films, and it was really where watching Bollywood films is what made me want to become an actor.
What was the journey like to become this big Hollywood actor that you are now? It can't have been easy, I'm guessing.
It has not, and still isn't easy. And I don't think it'll ever be easy. I'm sure people understand that it's not easy to be an artist, but unless and until you've actually tried it, I don't think people can really comprehend how difficult it is. I would never do anything else. It's been the most fulfilling journey. And, the power of storytelling and art and what we can do through telling stories on television and in film, even in theater. I don't think there's anything else that can have such an impact on the world.
How long did it take you to maybe from that dream of like, okay, this is what I want to do, to actually sort of doing it? How many years was it?
It took many years. Like I said, I grew up always wanting to be an actor, and I knew that was all I ever wanted to do. And I was so fortunate and blessed to have a family that nurtured that and supported that because of coming from an artistic family. They never once told me that, no, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer. I never heard that once from my family. So I'm so grateful for that. Although maybe they should have, because it might have, maybe it would have been a better path for me. I don't know. But I'm joking. So, I grew up always obviously wanting to be an actor. I went to college. After college, I moved to LA. That was about 12 years ago. And I guess you could say that that's really when my journey as a professional actor began. But it took many, many years and many hundreds, if not thousands of auditions to get something like Never Have I Ever.
Wow. And I think that's the point I was trying to make, because from the outside, somebody who looks at your journey or any, successful actor, like, oh, Richa's in this amazing Never Have I Ever. But without really realizing the thousands of auditions that you've just said. And that's for any creative, any artist, any writer, any actor, I think. And I think I just want to talk about that, because I don't think enough is talked about that, especially in the world that we live in, like social media, whatever. Like, hey, someone's famous and someone's making it. But we don't talk about the journey and the kind of relentless belief and faith and trying to make it happen, right? I know that one of the things you feel very passionately about is shining a light on kind of South Asian diaspora and representation in the arts, TV, film. Why is this important to you?
Oh man, if it wasn't important to me, I don't think I would really have a purpose as an artist. If we, and when I say we, I mean as South Asian creatives and artists are not fighting for authentic representation, nobody else is going to be fighting for that. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
And, I feel very privileged to be here at a time where people have paved the way for me. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it had not been for actors who have come much before me. And it was much more difficult for them when they arrived in town. Even, for myself, when I moved here 12 years ago, the opportunities that I'm seeing today and the people I'm seeing on screen today that did not exist when I first moved here. So things have really changed a lot. And that does not mean it's all good now. There's still so much to fight for. And that's something that I try to never forget, is as much progress that has been made, we are still very, very behind. And if we get complacent, that's the dangerous thing to do, because there's still so much to fight for.
For me, it's really heartening when I see what's happening in the US, shows like Never Have I Ever. And there's just so much coming out of the US, and all of you are doing incredible work. It makes me really, really happy. I've just come back from a month in New York. So this is the longest I've spent. And I kind of saw what South Asian creatives are doing in the US, and it made me really proud, really happy, really excited. I don't know any of you, but just the fact that you're out there, you're these incredible women creating big change. I don't think it's happening in the same way in the UK. Just seeing that, it just made me really, really happy. I also I spoke to a lot of, South Asian women and folks and creatives, and there seems to be a level of comfort in this duality of being American and South Asian. And I don't see that as much in the UK. So here you're either British or you're Indian or Pakistani or whatever. Whereas in America, it feels like everybody's like, I'm, I don't know, Italian American, I'm Indian American, I'm this and that. Has it always been like this kind of double-barreled identity that I think of as?
That's really interesting. I'm glad you shared that with me because I didn't know there was such a stark difference. But honestly, I don't think it's that different, to be honest, because no, I don't think it's always been that way here. I think that we are definitely in a time where it is cool to be Asian or South Asian or really just a person of color. I don't think that it was always that way. I did not grow up feeling like it was cool to be Indian. I was very proud of my culture. And if anything, it just angered me that people didn't see how glorious my culture was and how amazing we are and how beautiful everything about being South Asian is. But I think I might have been kind of alone in that. I know a lot of people who were ashamed of being Indian, and I don't blame them. We lived in a very different time. So I think things have changed in that sense. And I do think that obviously, speaking of representation, that's another reason why representation is so important, because I do believe that with authentic representation, people feel seen and they feel a sense of belonging. And, shows like Never Have I Ever, that's just scratching the surface. But I do feel like, and I've seen with my own eyes and heard stories from both young people in high school or younger, and even people from my generation and older who say that this show has given them such a deep sense of belonging and a sense of confidence in themselves and in their culture that they didn't have before.
The other thing that really struck me in this month in the US was women. South Asian American women are killing it. Oh my God. Like, I went into Sephora and there were like 5 or 6 brands led by, like hair care, fashion, makeup. There was food, there's this, there's that. And again, that's not happening in the UK. Like, not at all. And I've been saying this to a lot of people since I've only been back for like 2 weeks, and I've been telling people that there's a real sense of South Asian female power, in America at the moment, in New York and LA and some of the other kind of bigger places. Where does that come from? When did that start? I'm really, really curious.
Yeah, it's something I've noticed too. I think it's really something that I've noticed in the past 4 or 5 years. I don't think I ever really saw it that way before 5 years ago. I do not know the answer to that. I don't know why, but if I really think about it, I mean, I think it obviously must have something to do with the fact that, we are now in the generation where we have the freedom and the ability to be able to pursue different types of careers and professions that our parents did not have the privilege to do, because, most of us are children of immigrants who came to this country and they didn't have those options. Our mothers were mostly homemakers. They didn't have the option to, become actors or work for a magazine or go into politics. It was a very different time. And I think it's important to remember that as much as we are such a huge part of the fabric of society, we're still a very new minority to this country.
Yeah.
When people complain about how, South Asians never had a chance before, I'm like, well, we are still pretty new to this country. And, Black people have been here much longer than us. And that's why, it's taking us a little bit more time to catch up. But I do feel a lot of hope. I mean, I've seen so much progress. And I think if we just continue on this path, things will be so different for the future generations.
For me, it was a real difference. There was a real stark, really positive difference. And it made me feel really, really happy, actually. Something you mentioned earlier that I wanted to pick up on, Kathak. You're a professionally trained Kathak dancer. So tell me about this, like dance. What does it mean in your life, in your world?
It means everything to me. I mean, it's such a big part of my identity that I don't even know who I would be had I not been a dancer growing up, if that makes sense. And as I said, it was, beyond just being a dancer, learning Indian classical dance. So it's so much a part of my identity as an artist, but as a South Asian person and someone from the diaspora. And I feel so blessed and also just grateful to my family for, encouraging me to learn and to continue learning, because I think it's very common for South Asian kids to grow up learning an instrument or Hindustani classical or South Indian classical or, some kind of dance form.
Yeah.
But most people don't continue it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just so happy that my parents encouraged me to continue and that I stuck with it, because it's not easy. And it is, to really be a serious classical artist, whether that's a musician or a dancer, you really have to dedicate your life to it. Yeah. And there's a huge part of me that actually has always felt torn between that and acting. Yeah. Not that I can't do both, which I do, but if I really wanted to be an accomplished Kathak dancer, I would have had to really dedicate my life to that.
But it sounds like it's really informed your life in many ways. It just sounds like the way you speak about it. Dance is so much about kind of connecting with the body, isn't it? And being in the body. When I look at your social posts and your Instagram, you seem really comfortable in your body. That's what it comes across. And it's, to me, as a woman and as a feminist kind of living in this day and age, and as an older person as well, there's such a conflict between kind of women and how comfortable we are allowed to be in our bodies, and how we've got to almost fight for that comfort and that sense of confidence. Confidence is a weird word, but do you feel that confidence? Have you always had it?
I will say, reflecting on it as you're speaking, no, I have not always been confident in my body. I've always had a lot of insecurities and still do. But, there are times where I feel more confident than other times, and certain parts of myself that I feel more confident about than other parts. And that's something that I'm just continuing to navigate and learning to accept. But I will say that dance has given me a lot of confidence, and I feel the most confident when I'm dancing. It's and acting for that matter. I think when I'm immersed in what I love to do so much, vanity goes out the window. I don't care what I look like. I don't care what my body looks like. I'm just so in the flow, if that makes sense. I'm way more self-conscious and not confident when I have to be myself.
I just wanted to talk to you about this Western versus South Asian ideal. Have you ever thought about it?
I mean, I totally agree with everything you're saying. I think that it's very interesting just to see how those standards have evolved over the years, especially in our culture, because of being so influenced by Western standards of beauty, which are extremely toxic and unrealistic. And Hollywood plays a major role in perpetuating those toxic standards. And it's a very pervasive thing that I feel affects me, affects everyone that I know in this industry, and people who watch these movies and watch movies from Bollywood. And I just think it's sad because it's not realistic, it's not sustainable, and it's not healthy.
And it isn't even who we are genetically. And I think that's what bothers me. Like, we are, as Asian women, we're curvy. Like, we've got hips and breasts and bellies, and it's who we are genetically. And I feel like there's all this pressure to fit into something that we're not. And where, on one hand, we're like embracing who we are, like we're eating our rotis and, making khichdi, and I'm making appams or whatever. So there's that part of us that we've kind of reconnected with, or we are in the process of reconnecting with. But in terms of our beauty aesthetic, we're still kind of, buying into the Western standard. Is it because we live in the West? But, everywhere is dominated by the West. And I think that bothers me. Who we are naturally, who we are genetically, isn't cool, isn't beautiful, where I think it is beautiful.
I agree. And I think I don't know what the solution is, but I definitely do think it's a systemic problem. I have never in my life thought that I was overweight. I've always been underweight. I've always been the skinny person in my, the groups of people I would hang out with.
Yeah.
And now I'm told, oh, this designer may not be able to dress you because you're not a size 0. And I'm like, excuse me? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just absolutely sickening.
It's like we're constantly being made to feel awful about ourselves. And imagine if you're made to feel that you're like one of the most beautiful women I know. You're on our TV screens. And if you're made to feel like that, like I really feel for the rest of us, how are we supposed to to feel beautiful? And I want us to feel beautiful. Why should we not feel beautiful?
And that's why I'm saying it's a systemic problem, because we're literally told that there's something wrong with you. And that's why you're not going to be dressed for this occasion, or you're not going to be invited to this thing, or you're not going to be, the star of, I'm just saying, in general, not that those things have all been told to me, but these are the things that I hear. And so people feel like they have to conform to these ideals. And like I said, I don't know what the solution is, but I do think that having conversations like this is very important. And it's just, I think we have to, as much as we have to fight for authentic representation, I think that also applies to authentic representation of what our bodies should look like or do look like.
Absolutely. And the right to exist as we are and not have to, it always to me feels like to be a woman is like this goal that's always out of your reach. You're like, to be a beautiful woman, hey, you've got to, I don't know, work out more, eat less, be on a diet, whatever, buy these pills, whatever there is. And it's always to make us feel not good enough, not beautiful enough, not desirable enough. It makes me really, really angry. I don't have the solution either, but it just feels like I want to talk about it, and I want us to talk about it so that there's a chance for change in some way.
I think that the focus should just always be on what makes you feel healthy and what makes you feel strong, and what you look like, it will be a result of that.
Do you get many messages from South Asian women saying, oh, wow, I love how you look, or I want to look like you, or you make me feel good, or any of these things?
Yeah, maybe I do. I would say more so I get messages like, I just love what you're doing for South Asian, for our community, and how you're paving the way. And yeah, maybe I get a little bit of both, but maybe those are the messages that stand out to me more.
I moved to the UK from India almost 2 decades ago, and I've never seen real first-generation Indian women like me represented in Western TV or media. That's why it was such a joy to see Kamala's character, played by Richa in Never Have I Ever. I loved how Kamala keeps her Indian side, even as she discovers the freedoms that America offers her. I also love the fact that Kamala is a fully rounded character in the show, where so many Indian characters in Western shows are like a pale pastiche of real Indian people. Think of characters like Apu in The Simpsons, whose voice was such a racist caricature. Talking of voices, I do love the fact that Kamala's accent stays sort of Indian in the show. And let me tell you, there's a subtle yet powerful pressure on immigrants like me to sound more British or American or Australian, to just change ourselves and fit in. As somebody who's from India and is Indian and now lives in the UK, certain times it feels like you have to earn, you're not quite there yet as a first generation person. It's very subtle, and it's sort of like a little bit of racism even within the South Asian community.
Absolutely. I think South Asians are some of the most racist people in the world.
I'm glad you said it, not me.
It's true. We have to. It's true. We have to learn to recognize that.
So true. So true. Like someone told me, there's this whole fresh off the boat, freshie. It's apparently a thing in Britain where if you've just arrived, like me, even though it's been 18 years, you're still fresh off the boat and you've got to earn your place. So, like stay in your lane, earn your place kind of thing. So as an Indian girl, like I loved how Kamala was equal to everybody else. She was a real character, not like this, in the sidelines kind of character, not an oppressed Indian woman, which we see a lot of. Tell me a little bit about her and how she kind of evolved.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say that, because I also did feel that, throughout the 4 seasons, Kamala did have to, in a way, not prove herself, but, we saw the whole storyline of her at her lab.
Yeah.
And that it didn't only have to do with her being a South Asian, but it was more so, I guess, to do with being a woman, but really being a woman of color, because this is a real thing that exists in the world of STEM for women of color, is they are not taken seriously. They are not given the same opportunities. They don't get the credit that they deserve. And so I really thought it was brilliant that they included that storyline. I know it was not, a very long storyline, but it was something that was very important. And I received so many messages from young and older women of color and South Asian women who are in STEM who say, this is exactly what I go through. And I'm so happy that you showed this because it makes me feel less alone.
That in itself is amazing. We never see fully rounded South Asian characters, right? And it was such a joy to see Kamala evolve along with all the other characters. And I loved how you played her as well. And it's very heartening to hear that other women in STEM kind of careers and jobs felt seen and heard. So that is really, really beautiful. Let's talk about Indira, your character in the new Hulu series Fargo. Tell me a little bit about Indira.
Oh, wow. Well, to pivot from Kamala, there couldn't be more different, but also they have some similarities. One fun fact that I didn't realize was that Indra is also another name for goddess Lakshmi, who sits on a lotus flower, which we know is Kamala. So I thought that was a little bit cosmic. But, for people who have not seen Fargo yet, one thing I'll say is that if you want to watch the season that I'm in, you don't have to watch the previous seasons because and they call it installments. Every installment is a totally different story with a new cast and new everything. So this is installment 5 and it's a totally standalone season. Indra is a cop. Fargo has always had a central female cop character all the way from the movie with Frances McDormand playing the Marge Gunderson role. And this is the first time that not only is a woman of color the main cop, but it is a South Asian woman. So it was very exciting to me when I got the scripts, and I hope it's exciting to the community. And she's a very, very important character who kind of represents the moral center of all the quirky, crazy characters. But at the same time, she's very messy and has a lot of personal issues that she's dealing with.
No, that sounds brilliant. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm really looking forward to watching it.
Yeah.
Tell me, what's it like to play these women, and you're someone who's been an actor for a little while, and now these are the characters that you're playing. These Indian women, these real women with real stuff going on in their lives, whether it's Kamala or Indira. What does that feel like?
It feels... I just feel very fortunate to get to play these women because I feel like all of these women are extensions of myself. And, I'm not the kind of actor that gets lost in characters. If anything, I try to find who I am in these characters and how I relate to them. Even if they're very different from me, there's always something that I find a little connection to. And I feel like I've grown so much from playing these characters, not just as an actor, but as a person. And I'm really excited that I got to do something that was so drastically different from Never Have I Ever, to be able to challenge myself as an artist and also show the world that I can do something totally different.
With Never Have I Ever, because the whole story is so South Asian, the cultural nuances are, incredible. I'm sure you've heard this before a million times, but praying to Krishna and, like the kind of very subtle cues of our culture, they're kind of on our screens and we've never seen that before. What was the experience like being in that world with other actors, all South Asian, the stories being South Asian, the references being South Asian? What was that like?
Honestly, it felt like a dream. It felt like a dream when I was there doing it. And even now, reflecting on it and thinking about it, it feels like a dream that never actually really happened. Because it is so rare that it has never happened, and I hope it happens again. But it has never happened before until Never Have I Ever. Never had I ever been on a set like that before. I I would honestly, driving from my home to Universal Studios, which is where we shot, every morning, I would just be counting my blessings and just honestly sometimes in disbelief that was my job and that's what I got to do. That was something that I had the privilege to do, and to tell that story and to be surrounded by people wearing South Asian clothes and eating South Asian food on set and really feeling like we owned that set, which is just a feeling that I had never had before.
Wow. And it's sad that you've never had that before, isn't it? Like, thinking about it, anybody from, not just you, I mean, like, we've never had that before.
It is sad, but I do think there always, something always has to be the first thing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing what other opportunities come from Never Have I Ever creating a path. And I have seen firsthand how much more of a spotlight our community is getting and how many more opportunities are being created.
Absolutely. And I think for me, what's particularly heartening is, the thing you're told is that if you do something so culturally specific, it's not going to work. It's not going to be successful.
Yeah. And this was an example that's not true.
Like,
yeah.
Exactly. Like, look at how it worked and look at how successful it was.
Yes.
So to me, that's super, super heartening.
Yeah.
Do you still, I imagine, and this is probably just in my head, that everyone's really good friends from Never Have I Ever, and you all stayed connected and you're all in each other's lives and you like hang out with each other. Is that true? Or is it just in my head?
No, it's not just in your head. We are definitely, we grew up together on that set. I mean, Purna and I are literally best friends now. We talk to each other every single day. I'll probably FaceTime her right after this. But it was an intergenerational cast, right? So we're all kind of different ages. But, the younger kids who played the high school students, including my three, they were literally babies when we did season 1. And it's just been incredible to see how everyone has grown up together. And by the end, it really felt like a family. I think there's just something about, that cast being on a show like that specific show with a cast like that, even if we all go on to do different things, I think we will always have that connection. It's very special.
So if you were sitting and talking to Richa 5 years old, what would you say to her?
5 years old, wow.
Oh, 6 years old. A young version of you.
A young Richa, sure. I would just say, don't ever let I don't know, it's hard to say because I feel like I've accomplished everything I've accomplished because of who I've always been. And I had to make mistakes along the way and I had to learn certain lessons. So I almost don't want to change that trajectory. But if it would give some comfort, I would just say never let anyone dim your light or apologize for being the way you are. You're perfect exactly as you are.
That's beautiful. And is there anything you'd like to say to listeners of Masala Podcast? Something that helps them, inspires them in their own life journeys? They're all South Asian women. That's my audience.
Oh, I don't feel like I'm qualified to give advice to all the South Asian women listening to this, to be honest.
No. Anything from your own life. It doesn't have to be like, I'm not holding you responsible for inspiring every South Asian woman in the world. But what would you say that would help? Because you've done it, you're successful, you're kind of owning it.
Thank you. I don't know. I mean, if anything, I would just tell them what I would tell myself, that this is your moment and, you're living in the best time possible to be able to accomplish everything you've ever wanted to accomplish. So don't let any opportunity pass you by.
That's beautiful.
Is it? I don't know.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because it's also allowing ourselves to believe that it's possible. Because if you live in a world that tells you we often won't even allow ourselves to reach for something, right? And it's almost like somebody gives you permission to say you're saying this, or somebody else or me saying, hey, it's possible. You can. Now's the time. And there's never been a better time, which is what you're saying. And it's absolutely right. Like, I saw it. There's never been a better time to be a South Asian woman, to be doing the thing you want to do, whatever it is. You want to have a STEM career, you want to be an actor, you want to have a podcast, whatever it is possible. And it has never been more possible than it is right now.
This has been such a delight to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Richa. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure to have you on Masala Podcast.
Thank you.
Besharam, Badtameez, Gandhi, Hi, bad beti.